on David Smoak. Over the weekend, GXG, we've told you, and Mac Rhodes has said this, also Jeremy Fudge, among others, that they're going all in and more public than ever before about Baylor and the NIL. What was going to happen with Richard Reese? The 2 kick returns only reminded everybody how dynamic he was. He's back. There's his tweet. Green and gold, Richard Reese. Thoughts that he might leave. He's back. Also, Monterey Baldwin, who was one of their more dynamic players. Craig Smoak earlier mentioning again that he's back for the 2024 year. Feels like a win for Aranda Spavital and crew. While those 2 are coming back, there is this one. Blake Shapen, who we knew last week was going to enter the portal, is still in the portal. He talked with Jake Spavital over the weekend. Spavital will have that for you on the Blake Shapen news. He's still in the portal. And tight end Drake Dabney, one of the better players on the team, his image and saying, thank you, Baylor. He now has also entered the portal. Craig, we'll start with you, then Paul, and we'll discuss these 4 names and then get to Jake Spavital.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think Baylor's had like over 50 guys or around 50 guys that have pledged to come back. I sure hope this isn't a yearly thing where you have to go check the entire roster off after the season wraps up. I've not seen everybody else or anybody else for that matter doing that, but I guess with their situation with Aranda and coming back and it being known that this is really his last year if he doesn't get it turned around, and just all of the questions about who they're going to have on the roster and all that. It's a way of, creating some spirit and also some, belief in what they have coming back and just kind of getting things drummed up and exciting after a very long trying year. And so it's been interesting to see that process play out. And like I said, there's been like 50 guys now at this point who have publicly made a decision of some sort. So on the one hand, it's like, how many guys do you want back and how many guys do you need to turn over to be better next year? Or you're, I guess, banking on that so much of that roster was young and that you just simply need them back in to have another year with some different coaching, and that will be the cure-all for what ailed you. I mean, that's the way to read it now, given that you're bringing back so many of those guys. So, yeah, a lot of the young players, but those that you mentioned, I mean, Richard Reese, I'm curious to see how he fits in Spavital's offense, but obviously a player who did not get used to the best of his ability this season in the offense they were running with Jeff Grimes. He was basically a non-factor in so many ways compared to the year prior. Who was the other one that's coming back? Monterey Baldwin, I mean, that's huge. I think in this spread up tempo offense, he should be able to thrive in that. That's a guy who very well could have walked into the portal and we would never have seen him again. But to get him back, I was almost surprised by that. Not so much Richard Reese, although I was a little bit there. But Monterey Baldwin, I figured he'd probably go somewhere else. And so to see him come back, I think is great news for them. So that's 2 playmakers that they have. And then you don't have to go out in the portal and be like, we need a slot wide receiver who can do this or do that. You've got a couple of guys. You've got a guy, and for that specific example with Monterey Baldwin. For the other 2, Dabney, it was always going to be NFL or, the potential of coming back or the potential of entering the portal, and I just thought that the portal might be the last option, but that's where he's headed, and so, good for him. I'm sure he'll make a mint and, go play for a team that's, competitive and probably in the mix for some championships, and he's earned that right, but still tough to see him go. He was your best receiver for the most part this past season, right there with Monterey Baldwin. So that's a blow for the tight end room and a blow for the offense just overall. That's not one that you really are like, oh, that's good attrition, or we wanted to see that. The Dabney one's a guy you would have liked to have had him back. And then Blake Shapen, I think at this point I'm all for it. I'm all for him going and doing something different. When they talked last week about having a conversation with Blake and potentially changing his mind, and Spavital even left that open earlier today as well, that they're still continuing those conversations. I can see the logic in bringing him back, but I also see the absolute need to just move on at this point. And so if he stays in the portal, as it appears that he will, that means he's most likely moving on, and I think that's probably best for all parties involved at the end of the day. Even though it would make the quarterback depth issue a lot simpler, you'd still have the whole dilemma of running back your quarterback competition from last year. And then what happens after spring when you crown, what if Shapen beats out Sawyer Robertson again? Does Sawyer Robertson say, screw this, I'm out of here? So you can avoid that issue, but they're going to need some quarterback help with Shapen in the portal. I'm just not going to lose a lot of sleep over the fact that they're not going to have him on the roster. So one guy that you hate to see go, one guy that you understand and is not a huge deal in the long run, in my opinion. And then a couple guys you are more than happy to have back that should be big contributors for you next year. So a mixed bag, but that is the transfer portal in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think making sure you got the 2 best playmakers on the roster back in this new offense was especially one that if you keep Richard Reese and you keep Monterey Baldwin, it's going to highlight them a lot better than the last offense did. So, yeah, it's very important to keep those guys. And there's going to be guys that walk into the portal that nobody's going to be like, oh no, that's going to happen.
There's some that probably were. I mean, in a way, hey, you probably need to look somewhere else.
But look, I agree with Craig 100% in that. I think Blake Shapen will probably be a better fit somewhere else right now, and that Baylor's probably best off not to try to run it back. It's just one of those things of like get a fresh start, see what's going to get a new offense, new quarterback, all those things. I think Sawyer Robertson's skill set lends itself to this offense as well. I mean, he was already playing an elite system when he transferred in, which is why it was kind of a big jump when they got him in that offense in the wide zone. So yeah, I think that's best for everybody. Drake Dabney, go to a place that's going to feature the tight end a little bit more than this offense will and knock yourself out. Plus, they had kind of a glut of tight ends on the roster, so it was going to kind of happen anyway. Find the fits that are best for you and move on. That's how college football works now. And so they've got their work cut out for them, and it's not really skill positions that are the problem, guys, as we know. I mean, they could get better at wide receiver. I think Keytron Jackson another year in a system that maybe highlights what he can do will be better. Hal Presley's reliable, but they probably need to go get more wide receivers. But this is about the big dudes, the hogs up front.
And speaking of that, Eric Mateos is on his way to Arkansas, and now they're looking for a new offensive line coach. Craig?
Yeah, I just think with Blake Shapen, it's like you've done that now the last couple of years, and if you're going to go out swinging one final fight, I mean, why not shake it up and try something new? Like, I just think it would be a real bummer to run it back again and basically be like you look in the mirror and you don't see that much of a difference, and you try to no, this year, really, I just think Blake Shapen kind of represents the last couple of years, if that makes sense. And so with this one final swing for Aranda to get it right, I mean, go all in on a new guy and see if that makes a difference for you. Sawyer Robertson or whoever you might go get in the portal, what we do know is they're going to be in the portal and they will be, looking for a quarterback amongst other things. But Paul's right, and I'm not so much worried about the skill guys. I do think that, we still need to see does Dominic Richardson come back at running back to complete that group. We haven't seen that just yet. I think most of the receivers outside of a couple of them, Armani Winfield, Hal Presley, have not declared. But you have a good group to work with there, but you're going to probably need to add a receiver or two. I think you're good on tight ends for the most part. Spavital actually is not opposed to using he said today he works with the ingredients that are in the kitchen, so their glut of tight ends is actually not a negative. It's something that he can use, but all of it does come back to whether it's offense or defense, where a lot of other guys have already pledged to return as well. It does come back to the lines. And that's where I'm very curious to see how they, go about trying to fix the offensive line in particular, because guess what everybody else in the portal is looking for? They're looking for quarterbacks just like you. They're looking for offensive linemen just like you. They're looking for defensive linemen just like you. And so what makes you special, or what makes you have the ability to go and get the right guys, the right fits that can make impacts next year? It has to be next year for Aranda. This is not any 2-3 years down the line if they pan out into no. You need guys through the portal that can help you win right now, or you're not going to have any more opportunities to try and go win. So yeah, the skill guys, those have kind of cleared themselves up, and that's a good start for Aranda this offseason and Spavital and the rest of the staff. But they do have a running backs coach vacancy now with A.J. Stewart gone after just 1 year. They have the O-line coach vacancy with Eric Mateos gone to Arkansas, so they need to fill those as well. But yeah, I mean, it's not an impossible task, but it's going to be very curious to see how they maneuver through a very crowded marketplace.
All right, speaking of the offense and what they're going to do, obviously Jake Spavital announced last week, and he was today available to the media along with head coach Dave Aranda. Here are 3 or 4 answers that Spavital had based on questions today about the Baylor offense.
Jake, David Smoak, 365 Sports. Have you already had time, or have you had time to look at the personnel? Some are coming back, some are not. Have you had time, and how does that affect what you do immediately on the recruiting trail?
Yeah, fortunately, I've been up against these guys, recently, so I have a pretty good idea. But in today's ever-changing climate of college football, there's going to be a lot of moving parts. Like, as you guys saw, you wake up this morning and the whole country is, moving and shaking, and ESPN alerts are hitting your phone, and so it's more about like what I see is that there's not much attrition at this school compared to most, and that's a compliment to Coach Aranda and the culture that he's created here. So you're allowed to really just kind of look at what we currently have, which I have looked at a few of these guys. I do think there's pieces in place to be successful here. I truly do. And I do think that the spread system, you don't have to be perfect all the time. And it allows these guys to play more freely and openly. And that's something where you may not be the most talented person, but you can have a lot of success in this system. And, there will be a lot of moving and shaking, as I've said, over the next, month. But, once it solidifies down, we'll have a pretty good direction on what we're going to go from a personnel standpoint.
Hi, Jake. Shaji Adam with ABC 25. You kind of touched on it. What is the identity of the offense that you want to have on the field and off the field?
Yeah, we're going to be a spread up tempo offense, and you probably hear that, heard a lot. But playing with tempo is going to give us an edge. It really does. I think in today's time, defenses are so innovative, so creative. You used to be able to go up against a team that was a 4-down team, and that's what they do the entire game. Now you got to block it all. They're going to be in bear fronts and odd fronts and 4-down fronts, everything. So I think tempo kind of really combats that at times and puts our guys in better positions where they don't have to block all the exotic looks. So we're going to be a spread-up tempo team. But I think the run game, what we've done over the years, is more of a downhill approach, because – again, there's so much variety with defensive fronts. If you do get caught in a bad look at times, and you can at least manage to get that back to the line of scrimmage where you're not dealing with negative plays and you're still trying to play and stay on course and not play behind the chains. But you've got to establish the run game, so you play fast and you got to hammer the ball downhill. And then it's all about vertical shots down the field. And I always try to take around 10 shots vertically down the field a game. That's like the goal that I'm always trying to hit. So you're going to see a lot of vertical shots down the field. And then just from my air raid background as well, there will be an element of quick game and perimeter screen game and everything to get the defense running sideline to sideline. And the theory behind that is if you're playing with a great pace and you're getting the defense to run sideline to sidelines, you can get them to wear down pretty quickly. And at that point, then the ball's in our court. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of conditioning involved. There's a lot of an edge and toughness, but if you're just playing with a good pace and you're being aggressive and tough and running downhill and still keeping them on their toes of going sideline to sideline and throwing it vertically, it's a really good balance, and it's very, very tough to defend.
Jake, the news of Blake entering the transfer portal kind of broke today with the portal opening. What's the priority there, obviously, with the spread offense needing a quarterback to run that system, and do you attack the transfer portal yourself to find that guy?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. If Blake decides not to come back, I'm still in conversations with Blake. I get, new guy and coming in, a lot of unknowns, and he's got to build a relationship with me. So that's still on the table. But just from a depth purpose, this is why, especially at Texas State, when I was in these scenarios, you have to build depth, and sometimes the easiest way to do that is to get into the portal. But I do believe quarterback play is the key to success. I really do. The best offenses I've ever had, I've had really good quarterbacks, and I've been fortunate. I think I've coached 10 NFL QBs, and those have been some pretty solid offenses when you got a good guy, at the trigger man at that position. So that's going to be that importance. But losing Blake, I think he's a great player, and he's a proven player and played a lot of games, and we'll see where it goes from there. Just still have the dialogue and conversations with him, and then still be kind of searching around for anybody else.
All right, so there's Jake Spavital earlier today with Dave Aranda. Then he hit the road immediately as he needs to, as everybody else who can should, including whatever they do filling the positions at running back and offensive line coach too.